My parents called me a worthless burden because I couldn't lend them $500 for a vacation. I refused, packed my bags, and moved into a tiny studio. One day later, my mom showed up crying, begging to sleep on my floor because their hotel booking was cancelled. My name is Alina. I'm 34, single, child-free, and work as a legal assistant in Kansas City. I've been on my own for a long time, since I was 19, actually, when I first moved out. My relationship with my parents, Beverly and Curtis, has always been strained, to put it gently. They've always had a flair for dramatics, a warped sense of entitlement, and the uncanny ability to twist guilt into a language all its own. I wasn't the golden child. That was my brother, Felix. 2 years younger, always louder, more reckless, and strangely more loved. My parents coddled him, excused everything he did, from wrecking their car in high school to racking up credit card debt in college. Meanwhile, I worked 2 jobs, paid off my loans, and sent birthday cards they barely acknowledged. Things have been worse in the last few years. They lost their house last year because they ignored repeated letters about unpaid property taxes. They moved into a small rental across the river, in Independence, and haven't stopped complaining since. Not about the loss, mind you, but about how I wasn't helping enough. According to them, I owe them for raising me, for putting up with me as a teenager. And now, with no savings and their credit shot, I become their plan B. Scratch that, I become their backup ATM. So when I got the call last week asking for $500 to cover the rest of a vacation to Cancun, yes, Cancun, I already knew where it was going. We're only short a few hundred. You've got that in savings, don't you? My mom asked, like she was asking me to pass the salt. I paused, trying to stay calm. Why are you going on vacation if you're short on money? Don't be like that, Alina. We've had a rough year. We need this. And I have bills. Rent. Groceries. I'm barely making it through this month after that tire replacement. That's when my dad's voice cut in from the background. He was clearly on speaker the whole time. Unbelievable. We raise you, and this is the thanks we get? You don't even have a family of your own. What are you doing with your money, hoarding it like some troll under a bridge? I felt something in my chest tighten. That cold, familiar squeeze. You've always been a burden, he said. We just didn't want to say it before. I don't know if it was the words or the tone, but I suddenly felt very, very done. Without responding, I ended the call. Then I stood up, walked into my bedroom, and pulled out the small suitcase I kept in my closet for weekend trips. I'd been casually looking at other places for months. My apartment lease was month to month, and I'd recently toured a tiny studio over in Westport, a grungy place with yellowed walls, a creaky fire escape, and exactly one window. But it was private. And it was mine if I wanted it. I called the landlord, told him I'd take it, and Venmo'd the deposit within the hour. That night, I packed in silence. I wasn't heartbroken. I wasn't even angry. I just felt done. The kind of done that doesn't come from one bad moment, but years of being chipped away until there's nothing left to argue for. I left the next morning before sunrise. 2 suitcases, 1 box of kitchen things, and a coffee mug from a work Christmas party. I didn't even leave a note. The next night, I was lying on my mattress on the floor, eating cold takeout, and scrolling through old photos on my phone. I was halfway through deleting some old voicemails when someone started knocking, loudly, on my door. It was nearly 10 at night. I froze. I wasn't expecting anyone. I didn't even think anyone knew where I'd moved. Then I heard it. A voice. Muffled, but unmistakable. Alina, please. It was my mom. Through the peephole, I saw her, alone, clutching a rolling suitcase, mascara streaking her cheeks, her hair a frizzy mess. She looked like she'd walked 10 blocks crying the whole way. I opened the door. She blinked, like she couldn't believe I was really there. I didn't know where else to go, she whispered. I stood silently. They canceled our reservation, she continued. The card didn't go through, and then the hotel said they overbooked. Curtis went home to deal with it, but I couldn't go back like that. Not tonight. I stepped aside. She walked in, slowly, like she was walking into a stranger's house. Her eyes scanned the room, the one sink, the bare walls, the single folding chair in the corner. She looked confused. I thought you'd have more by now, she said quietly. I didn't answer. Just handed her a blanket and pointed to the floor beside the wall heater. She sat down, clutching the blanket like it was a life raft. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean for it to go like this. Still, I said nothing. What do you say to someone who only comes to you when they've got nowhere else? That night, she slept on my floor. I didn't. I sat by the window until dawn, watching the way the streetlight flickered across the bricks across the alley. I kept waiting for some kind of emotion to break through, anger, sadness, pity. But all I felt was tired. Not physically, but a bone-deep fatigue that I think had been settling in for years. The next morning, I made us both instant coffee with the last of the hot water from my cheap plug-in kettle. She was still on the floor when I handed it to her. She sat up slowly, her face puffy from crying or from the stiff floor, I couldn't tell. Probably both. She took the mug, looked at it, then looked at me. This is where you live now, she asked. I didn't answer right away. Just sipped my own coffee and leaned against the wall across from her. It's small, I finally said. But it's mine. And quiet. She nodded but said nothing else. She kept looking around, maybe expecting a hidden door, a couch, anything to prove I wasn't living like someone who had completely detached from everything. Maybe she thought I had a secret husband, or a roommate, or furniture stashed away. All she saw was a mattress on the floor, 2 moving boxes, and a woman who had clearly reached the end of a very long rope. I sat down on the floor across from her, the silence stretching. After a while, she said, "Your father doesn't know I'm here." I raised an eyebrow. He's stubborn. He doesn't want to talk to you right now. Says you've changed. That almost made me laugh. He's not wrong, I said. Her eyes met mine. I'm sorry about what he said. About what we both said. You meant it, I replied, calmly. You've always meant it. You just finally said it out loud. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I could see the gears turning. The defensiveness rising, then faltering. For the first time in a long time, she seemed uncertain about what to say. I didn't come here to fight, she said after a while. I came because I didn't want to sleep on a bench. I nodded. I didn't ask you to apologize. I just let you in. She looked down at her coffee. You didn't have to. After everything. Yeah. I know. She stayed another 2 hours. Didn't ask for money. Didn't talk about the trip. She mostly sat in silence, sipping the bitter coffee and occasionally glancing around like she was still trying to take it all in. When she stood to leave, she said, I don't know how things got like this. That made me pause. I wanted to say, because you made them this way. But I didn't. I just gave a short, tired smile. I think you do, I said. But you're not ready to admit it. She looked like she might cry again, but instead she nodded slowly and reached for the door. She left without hugging me. Without asking for anything else. I didn't hear from her for about a week. No calls. No texts. No smoke signals. Just silence. Then, I got a message from my dad. Short. Abrasive. You didn't need to take her in. She's not your responsibility. That was it. No context. No explanation. Just, more of the same. I didn't reply. A day later, I got a different text, from my mom. Thank you. I know that wasn't easy. It was the first time in a long time I saw words from her that weren't attached to a request. I didn't reply to that either. Not because I didn't appreciate it, but because I didn't know what to say. And for once, I didn't feel like I owed a response. My routine started settling again. Wake up. Shower with the weird sputtering pressure. Walk 2 blocks to the bus stop. Work 9 hours in a cramped law office full of people pretending to be more important than they are. Ride back. Heat up frozen soup. Sleep. Repeat. The studio was still quiet. Still dusty in the corners. But it was mine. I bought a small folding table from a thrift store and found a chair someone had left beside a dumpster that just needed a little wood glue. One afternoon, while organizing the box I hadn't opened since moving in, I found an old photo album. Tucked inside was a picture from when I was maybe 10, sitting on a dock at Table Rock Lake with my mom. We were both in matching sun hats, eating orange popsicles, legs dangling over the edge. We looked happy. I stared at it for a long time. Back then, things had felt possible. Like maybe we could have had a normal relationship if something, everything, had gone differently. But that wasn't the life we got. And now, here we were. I started hearing more from Felix around that time. He hadn't spoken to our parents since last Christmas, after they berated him in front of his wife for not helping with their car loan application. They'd expected him to co-sign. He refused. They called him ungrateful, spoiled, and even accused his wife of turning him against his family. Sound familiar? His message was short. A casual "hey, heard about what happened. You okay?" kind of thing. But it meant something. We hadn't been close in years, but suddenly we were both orbiting the same gravitational pull, the emotional wreckage left behind by our parents. We met for coffee that Saturday. It was awkward at first, but eventually, the floodgates opened. "They never stop, do they?" he said, stirring his latte. "Every time I think I've drawn the line, they move it." I nodded. "I didn't even tell them where I moved." "She found me anyway." He raised an eyebrow. "How?" "No idea. Maybe she remembered the address from that apartment search I showed her last month. Or maybe she just guessed." "Jesus. Yeah." He sighed. "So what now?" And honestly, I didn't know. I still don't. I didn't have a plan. Not then. Not now. I think that's part of what made the whole thing feel so disorienting. This wasn't the kind of falling out where someone slams a door and the story wraps itself up neatly. It was more like slowly realizing you've wandered too far out in the ocean, and the shore's just a memory now. Felix and I talked for over 2 hours at that coffee shop. It was the first real conversation we'd had in, maybe a decade? Somewhere between adulting, surviving, and avoiding our parents' constant chaos, we'd drifted. But there was something grounding in that afternoon. Like hearing your own language after being in a foreign place too long. "They asked you for vacation money?" he said at one point, almost laughing. "After all the crap with the foreclosure and the taxes?" "Unreal." "They didn't ask," I said. "They expected." He shook his head. "They used to do the same thing to me. You know that time they borrowed my emergency savings and said it was just a loan? They never paid it back, did they?" "Of course not," he said, sipping his coffee. "They said I should consider it a thank you gift for everything they did." We both went quiet. He glanced at me. "Do you think they even remember what it was like being parents?" I looked out the window. "I think they remember it differently than we do." The texts from our mom became more frequent, but less intense. Little check-ins. Photos of the neighbor's dog. A meme once. She never mentioned the money again. Not directly. Then, a week later, she called. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message that was mostly breathing and a choked up "I hope you're okay." That was it. No guilt, no demands. I sat on my mattress and listened to it twice. Then 3 more times. Each time, I tried to find something in her tone that sounded familiar, but all I heard was someone who sounded smaller than I remembered. That weekend, Felix called and asked if I wanted to have lunch at a small diner near Union Station. I said yes without really thinking about it. We spent most of the meal talking about old movies we used to watch, the weird neighbor who collected glass bottles, the creaky floorboard in our old house that we'd always trip over when sneaking out late. It was the first time in years we talked about before things got bad. He dropped his fork at one point and said, "You know what's weird? I don't think they were always like this." I looked up. Like what? So, entitled. Angry. It's like somewhere in the last 10 years, they just gave up on being people. I thought about that a lot after I got home. What makes someone turn like that? Is it age? Disappointment? Bitterness at how life turned out? Or is it just a pattern that finally reached its peak? And more importantly, what does it say about us, if we're their kids? Later that night, I got another message from my mom. This time, it was different. "I talked to your father. We're not doing well. I don't expect you to fix anything. I just miss you. That's all." I didn't reply. Instead, I got up, folded some laundry, and walked around my little studio, checking for the usual late-night noises: dripping faucet, the thump from upstairs, the occasional rustle behind the wall heater. I sat down at my new table and stared at my phone, rereading that message until the screen dimmed. I didn't know how to feel. She'd never said something like that. Not without an ask attached. Not without strings. Just a simple admission. "I miss you." It didn't erase anything. But it landed differently. For the first time, she wasn't calling me selfish. Or lazy. Or cold. She was admitting a feeling. An honest one. And still, I couldn't bring myself to write back. Because what do you say to a parent who only recognizes your value when they've run out of other options? The next day, I went about my routine. Work was hectic. One of the senior partners yelled at me because a client showed up an hour early and had to wait. Not my fault, but I was the easiest target. I took it in stride. After years of walking on eggshells, I'd developed a thick skin. Some days, too thick. I was walking home, bag slung over one shoulder, when I saw her again. My mom. She was sitting on the steps of the building across from mine. My first instinct was to keep walking. Pretend I didn't see her. But she looked up before I could decide. Her eyes met mine, and she stood quickly, brushing something off her lap. She didn't look as disheveled as the night she came crying. But she looked tired. And older. "Hey," she said, as I approached. I didn't speak. Just stopped a few feet away. I don't know. I was in the area. She wasn't. Not unless she'd gotten off the bus early and walked 20 minutes out of the way. I nodded slowly. "I don't want to make this harder," she continued. "I just thought maybe we could talk." I sighed. Not from annoyance. From the weight of it all. "Not here," I said. "Come inside." I let her into the building. She didn't say a word as we climbed the stairs. She hesitated when she saw the studio again, like seeing it in daylight made it more real. She sat on the folding chair. I sat on the mattress. It was quiet. "You didn't have to let me in," she said. "I know." She wrung her hands in her lap. "I know I've made a mess of things. With you. With Felix. With your father. I think we spent so long being bitter about what we didn't have, we forgot to be grateful for what we did." I didn't reply. Just stared at the chipped paint on the window frame. "I can't undo everything," she continued. "But I can try not to make it worse." I exhaled. "That's something." She nodded. "Do you hate me?" That caught me off guard. "No," I said after a long pause. "I don't hate you. But I don't trust you. Not yet." She blinked hard. then nodded, like she expected it but needed to hear it out loud anyway. She stayed for about an hour that day. We didn't cover anything earth-shattering. No grand reconciliations. No sudden flood of memories that made it all make sense. Just a slow, awkward return to neutral ground. We talked about the weather. About the neighbor's weirdly aggressive cat that always sat by the stairwell. About the new grocery store opening up 2 blocks away. She asked how work was. I gave short, honest answers. I didn't offer details. She didn't pry. When she stood to leave, she looked like she wanted to hug me but thought better of it. Instead, she just said, "Thank you," and walked out quietly. I stood there for a long time after the door closed. That night, I stared at the ceiling while the building settled around me. My body was still, but my mind wouldn't shut off. There was a tightness in my chest that didn't feel like anger. More like confusion. The kind that follows when the person who hurt you stops yelling and starts whispering. When their rage turns to regret, and you're left with all the sharp edges they threw at you, unsure whether to put them down or hold them tighter just in case. I didn't sleep much. The next week was quieter. She didn't call. Didn't text. I went about my days, the studio slowly starting to feel more like a home and less like a bunker I'd crawled into after a collapse. I finally hung up a thrifted mirror, bought a $5 rug from a yard sale, and cleaned out the mystery drawer in the kitchenette. Then came the letter. Yes, a physical letter. It was folded inside a plain white envelope, tucked under my door when I came home from work one night. Her handwriting on the front. I stood in my tiny kitchen for almost 5 minutes just staring at it. It wasn't long. Maybe 2 pages. Written on some old lined stationery that smelled faintly like her old perfume, something powdery and familiar I hadn't realized I remembered until that moment. She wrote about her own childhood. About how her parents never apologized. How she grew up thinking that if she didn't say anything when someone hurt her, it would somehow make her stronger. How marrying my dad had felt like safety at the time, someone who made decisions, who carried confidence like a badge. But over time, that confidence turned into control. She admitted that she used me, emotionally, financially, and that she'd mistaken my independence as a reason to expect more, not less. She said she wasn't asking for forgiveness. Just a little space in my heart where maybe, one day, she could try to show up better. I read it 3 times. Then I set it on my counter and didn't touch it for a week. During that time, Felix and I kept talking. It was strange how quickly we fell back into a rhythm. Not like we were kids again, because we weren't, but like we were finally seeing each other clearly as adults. Survivors of the same wreckage. He told me he'd gotten a letter too. Similar tone. A little less apologetic, a little more "we miss you." "She's trying," he said. "I don't know if it's real or if she's just scared we're really done with them." "I think it's both," I said. He nodded. "Maybe that's okay. People change for the wrong reasons all the time, but if it still leads to change." "Yeah," I said, half smiling. "It's a start." The real shift came 2 weeks later, when I got a message from an unfamiliar number. It was my dad. Just 5 words, "I'm not good at this." That was it. No accusations. No anger. No demand for a call back. I stared at the screen so long my phone went dark. I wasn't ready to respond. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to. But it stayed with me for days, like a pebble in a shoe. Not painful, exactly, but impossible to ignore. Then came the invitation. My mom texted again. This time, she didn't ask to come over. She didn't beg. She simply said, "We're having dinner next Friday. Just the 3 of us. I understand if you don't want to come. But you're welcome." No expectations. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no either. I just kept thinking about how many years I'd spent wishing they would listen. Wishing they'd even attempt to understand what it was like being their daughter, the backup plan, the ATM, the emotional dumping ground. And now they were doing something I never thought possible: nothing. No pressure. No guilt trip. Just an open door. Was that enough? I didn't know. I spent the next few days going through old journals. Notes I'd written to myself during college when I couldn't afford groceries. Letters I never sent after they'd disappointed me again and again. Even birthday cards from my mom, with notes scribbled that always managed to make the day about her: how grateful I should be, how lucky I was to have parents who've sacrificed everything. I read them all. And then I tucked them into a drawer and let them stay there. Not forgiven. Not forgotten. But maybe finally released from the front of my mind. That Friday came faster than I expected. I hadn't confirmed whether I was coming. I hadn't said anything at all. But around 6 p.m., I found myself staring at the inside of my closet, wondering if I should wear something a little nicer than my work clothes. Not for them, but for me. It was a casual spot they picked. One of those chain restaurants near the plaza, nothing fancy, but with tablecloths and a decent wine list. I arrived 15 minutes late on purpose. I needed to walk in on my time, not theirs. When I entered, I spotted them instantly. My mom looked tense. My dad was fiddling with the pepper shaker, not meeting her eyes or anyone else's. There was a space left open beside them. A place for me. It felt surreal. I walked up. Sat down. Didn't smile. They looked surprised. Maybe they hadn't thought I'd actually come. My dad cleared his throat like he was about to speak, but I cut in first. I'll stay for one drink. That's all. He blinked, sat back in his chair, and nodded. Okay. My mom tried to ease the tension with small talk. I let her ramble for a bit, about the weather, about a coupon she had for the grocery store, even about a new neighbor who plays the violin at odd hours. I nodded when appropriate but didn't say much. When the waitress brought the drinks, I looked directly at my dad. So. You're not good at this. That's what you said, right? He nodded, slowly. Yeah. I don't. I don't know how to fix it. You can't, I said plainly. Because this isn't just about words. This is about years. Decades. He looked down, shoulders tense. My mom reached for her glass. We know we weren't the best parents. You were barely parents, I said. You expected me to parent you. Her hand froze mid-sip. I continued, voice calm but steady. You took advantage of me. Of Felix. You treated us like financial backup plans. Like emotional punching bags. You never apologized. You just gaslighted us into thinking we were the problem. I let the words hang. They didn't interrupt. For once. You can't fix it in one dinner. Or one text. Or one letter. But I'll tell you what you can do. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. You can sit in that discomfort. You can feel that guilt. You can let it sting, the same way your words stung when I was 22 and begging you for help with tuition and you said, figure it out, you're an adult now. They both went very still. And maybe next time, I added, before you call your daughter a worthless burden for not funding your vacation, you stop and ask yourself how you even have the nerve to ask. My dad's face flushed. He looked like he might lash out, but then, nothing. Just a slow, defeated exhale. You're right, he said. 3 words I'd never heard from him before. You're right, he repeated. We were selfish. My mom looked like she was about to cry. I didn't comfort her. I let her sit in it. I finished my drink. Then I stood. This is where I leave it, I said. This one conversation, is the last time I do the emotional labor. The next step is yours. If you want a relationship with me, you're going to have to earn it. And it won't be easy. Or fast. And I won't help you get there. I turned to leave, but then paused. Oh, and by the way, I added over my shoulder. I booked a vacation next week. Mexico. Same resort you tried to go to. Except I paid for it myself, without begging or guilt-tripping anyone. The color drained from my mom's face. I figured if anyone deserves some sun, some rest, some peace, it's the person who got out of this mess. I walked out without looking back. That trip to Mexico was everything they thought it would be and more. I drank overpriced mojitos. I sat by the pool with a paperback and not a single call to return. I ate spicy fish tacos on the beach and watched the sun set over the ocean without a single thread of guilt wrapping around my chest. Felix joined me halfway through the week. We laughed like we hadn't in years. No baggage. No expectations. Just two adults learning how to live freely, unburdened. When I got back, there was a voicemail from my dad. Just 4 words this time: "We're proud of you." I didn't call back. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't need it anymore.